And welcome back.
Yes, and we are joined in studio by Carrillo, who is the wildlife manager from the Belize Forest Department, as well as Dr. Bart Harmsen. I said that right? Yes. Who is a wildlife research fellow from UB. So good morning, and thank you for joining us. It's all about conservation this morning.
Yes, it is. And this one, I think, was very difficult for people because we saw the photos of a headless jaguar floating in a river, and so many people are left asking, why? You know, we love our jaguars. We use it as the name for our teams. It's our mascot, and we're proud of them. And it really is difficult for us to comprehend that people would willingly do this to this animal. Talk to us about what you understand about this type of activity being done to jaguars. What is the motive here? Why would people do this?
Ooh. You want to go first?
Yeah.
Well, from what we have seen in the past, there are several motives for killing wildlife, let's say jaguars. It can be, as we have discussed several times, conflict. So that means a jaguar comes, kills cattle, sheep, pigs, dogs, and farmers retaliate, killing the jaguar. But what we see now, and possibly what happened with this case, is that now people are killing these animals for their body parts. The skin, the teeth, sometimes even the claws, bones, the meat. So that's very, very disturbing, because then we're seeing that if you're killing these animals for body parts, what happens if that demand increases?
Yeah.
And that is actually something that is, if you look internationally for all the cats in the world, it's always been an issue. It's actually sort of jaguars in the 1970s were hunted a lot. And the skins would go to Europe and the United States, and you would see photographs of people with the skins on it. And to a certain extent, you can say understandable, because it's beautiful, right? The skins are just fantastic. I mean, it's an enigmatic animal that's just, but their populations were plummeting at the time. It was really like, since that time, there has been sort of like, there's in certain areas where they rebounded, where they actually came back. And Belize is actually a country where they rebounded a lot because of the forest being here. In other countries, the rebounding hasn't happened too much because the habitat just kept shrinking. So they have not been able, they need land to just occupy it. But here it's actually, so if you have a market in that's internationally, and it's not necessarily, they will automatically look at Belize because this is a country where they are. And not necessarily the neighboring countries, because that's where deforestation is so high. And you saw in the previous segment how problematic that is. Those forces are coming from the outside here, and Belize is, I mean, as a foreigner having been here for 15 years, this is a little jewel. A little jewel that's sort of like, and people here are sometimes not, and that's where the international trade is actually just it's at the doorsteps for that. You know?
I'm glad you brought that up, because it is important for us to see the issue in context of what takes place globally. You know, jaguars aren't the only animals that are sought for their parts. You know, you go from very large animals to smaller ones. And in fact, some people in an illegal market will pay top dollar for some of these parts. We do have regulations to protect jaguars. Let's talk about what the laws set out when it comes to harming a jaguar in any way.
I think that would be...
Forest Department.
Well, we have the Wildlife Protection Act, and under the Wildlife Protection Act, there's a schedule, there's a list of animals that are fully protected in Belize, the jaguar being one of them. So under the Wildlife Protection Act, we can charge persons a maximum of $1,000 for a wildlife offense. But what we have been doing is that we have the Forest Act as well. And wildlife falls as forest produce because it comes from the forest. So under the Forest Act, the fines are much higher. And we have used that before. We have been successful in court. So now the fines are much higher whenever it comes to wildlife offenses. And we're working towards even increasing those even more. And it's just because we see that there is the need to really protect these animals. We understand that, yes, there is the use of game meat, so you kill or kill that here and there. But let's do it regulated, respect close seasons. But for these animals that really need to be fully protected, then definitely, yes, we need to make sure that the laws are respected.
Yeah. So for the farmer out there who's saying, yeah, they're protected, but they're eating my cattle, they're attacking my sheep, I'm losing money because I can't do anything to this animal. Why are jaguars important to our ecosystem, and why do we need to have them protected?
I think, and that is just because these people have a perfect. I think they're right. It's kind of like, if you're, I'm living in Belmopan. I don't have a farm. You're probably also going home here to Belize City. We're all sort of like, we need to protect jaguars. They're really nice, but if you're out there and you're living there, or you have a small house and you got small kids running around, you got a big cat, powerful cat. Running around, it's a different matter. And so we need to take that seriously. We really need to make sure that people are safe. That's always the first thing that you always have to take into account. But why are they important? It's kind of like, I come from a country, the Netherlands originally, and why is a guy from the Netherlands ending up here in Belize? I wanted to study wildlife. The Netherlands, there is no wildlife anymore. We don't have it anymore. The biggest animal is about this big. Right, and we're very proud of that, the predator that's there, and it's kind of like you can kick it and it goes away. All our stories of the sort of like mythology around it, which are wolves, bears, and everything like that, they're in books.
Yeah.
Now all the mythological animals here in terms of Mayans, and they're here.
Still there.
They're still here. These stories are still out there. There's a pride of that coming around there. There's no visitor wanting to visit your forests not walking around. I'm walking in the forest of the jaguar. If they're not here anymore, they're not coming anymore.
Yeah.
And so for tourism and everything like that, you see jaguars and everything. So then they need to stay there for that. And I can ask it sort of like, why are jaguars important? I actually think sort of like, do you think jaguars are important? Do you want to live in a country? Because it's for a Belizean who that question is important for. And I think that is something that is an important question to ask in terms of that. There is an enormous amount of people that I ask for. There's a pride here about their big cat, their big beautiful cat that's out there. And so the other side of that with the farmers that is there, we need to resolve that, because that is definitely, it's an economic issue. There's a safety aspect to it.
Of course.
Definitely it is. Because the one thing that is also there, it's kind of like jaguars are not known to, in any kind of way, to harm people. They can, but you've never had anybody on your show, it's sort of like, who had sort of like, our village has lost 5% of its people to jaguars every year. It doesn't happen. But there is a safety issue.
Yeah.
And so those
It does happen in a rare instance.
Yeah.
And there are programs in place, and this is really where we can take the opportunity to teach people from this case. There are programs in place to assist when there is a jaguar that is somehow affecting your property, right? Tell us about that.
Yeah. So what we did is this program started many, many years ago along with Panthera and the Forest Department. So what we have is there has always been a person there to respond to these issues, so jaguar conflict, human-wildlife conflict. What we do is we get calls from all around the country about issues happening, jaguar eating all kind of things.
Yeah, my dog, my
Cat.
Yes. So what we do is we respond by going to farms, we talk to farmers, see what really is happening, why are the attacks happening, because sometimes it's something as small as just the management of the animals that we can change in a day or two, and the attacks might stop. So what we do is we teach farmers what they can do to really manage their animals properly, to make sure that wildlife you can coexist with wildlife.
Yeah.
You can have your farm and then you can have wildlife remain in the forest. So it's just about coexistence, and that's what we try to teach them. Small things sometimes we can do to just make that big change.
Yeah.
So we get calls every week from all around, and we're just responding to all of them as much as we can. And it's just about that education part. We need to make sure that farmers are educated and know what they can do to help their farm management and stop these attacks.
And you've set up video cameras and even talked about there's a sound system you can use too. Was that for the jaguars, for the problem cats?
Problem cats.
Yes.
Yeah, because it's not always jaguars too.
Yes.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
The sound system, because I understand that was one that was less successful. I understand.
Oh, okay.
No, we're trying out everything. That's the one thing that is
How did
there.
that work?
And the one thing that we had it in the U.S., it's kind of like they have problems with bears. And so we know from different research that you have these sound systems that are ultrasonic sounds, and the bear comes in and it hears the sound, it gets triggered, and they run away. And we tried that for jaguars as well, and we put the video cameras on it, and the sound came on, and I think it was mostly that they went towards the sound. So
Cats are curious.
So we're not using the sound system anymore.
It could be that it's something that has to be louder or
Yeah.
different, but it's at least like bears run away, jaguars
are-
go
jaguars
towards it.
are-
But cats are curious, you know.
yeah.
So I mean,
And so that is the thing, and I actually think it's one of the things which, and you correct me if I'm wrong if I'm saying that, but it's something that's actually a good thing where if you start working with the farmers, and that's the one thing, farmers are actually very knowledgeable about these things. They know about them, and you got many of them that are actually sort of like, look, it's problematic.
Yeah.
I want to get rid of this problem, and I will. But if I don't have to get rid of the problem, I would be happy with it.
yeah.
And I actually think that's an attitude which is sort of like, that's a good one.
Yeah.
And so when you install something like that or anything like that, they're perfectly willing to work with you. And they're kind of like, they're curious about if it works. They like to see the videos and everything like that. And that's actually the nice part about it. That's the nice thing where you can make the change and everything like that. And that's where I think that's a satisfying part of the work, right? If you see.
So they are open. So it is just a matter perhaps of having more people understand that they can contact the forest department if they feel they have a problem cat or a problem jaguar in their area.
Yeah.
Right?
So what happens most of the times is people would call us, and immediately what they want is just remove the cat. And the first thing they blame is the jaguar.
Yeah.
So whenever we go into the farms afterwards and we investigate, find evidence, see the tracks and all of that, we sometimes see that it's coyotes, pumas. It's not always the jaguar. So what we're doing is just as the one with the different sounds, we keep testing different things, and right now we're trying something new that has been working with leopards. So we're hoping that it's going to be something positive, and it's just because we want to promote conservation of jaguars and assisting, helping, moving towards that. But at the same time, we have to think about the farmers and just Belizeans as a whole.
Yeah.
It is important, that's their livelihood. So we have to make sure that, whatever we can do, we will be assisting them. Yeah.
Now, I don't want to say that it's only farmers that are killing jaguars,
No.
because we also know that there are some people that if there is an opportunity to make money from something and it is accessible to them, they may venture to do it. And if I can make money from selling jaguar teeth or from having the head or the skin or the meat of a jaguar, they may go ahead and do it. What can we do from the consumer end to help to stop the problem?
That's something that you can look at two sides. I think that's equally with the forest departments, or you can because there's a law enforcement component. Of course, and I'm not going to speak about that.
Yeah.
But it is, of course, that it's kind of like it's with anything that's illegal. If you would have something like something like if you see somebody selling drugs at a school or something like that, the way how you stop it is to say that's wrong.
Yeah.
That's just something that should not happen.
Yeah.
And certain parts are just part of a culture that is kind of like, because I think one of the things that's also the good part about Belize is that Belize is very comfortable with wildlife around it and using things. I mean, I think it's actually kind of nice that people here have a certain part of like, oh yeah, I eat a gibnut. Mm-hmm. In other countries, it's kind of like you can't actually have them anymore because it's so rare that that's not possible. Yeah. So there's a certain part that the relationship here is. And so the changes of those things are sort of like how rare are they is something that needs to be also taken into account, how that will all work. Mm-hmm. And now Jaguar, which is a top predator, which numbers are much lower than, for example, with a gibnut. The gibnuts can take a lot more. You have to be more careful with that. And so those sort of things are actually sort of like, and that's why the law enforcement becomes much more important, that you have to be more careful with that, I think.
What I wanted to ask is how at risk is the jaguar population in Belize?
I think you're probably looking at me sort of like you know the numbers. And,
You should.
Yeah.
It's something that every year we do get reports of jaguars being killed, but it's what gets reported is just what we know of. Out there, illegal killings of jaguars is happening, and we don't really have a complete idea of what that is. So we were discussing about, we have a population of jaguars which is still healthy for Belize, but at the same time, that rate of killing that is happening without it being reported, that is what we don't know. How is it going to end up affecting in 2-5 years from now? So that's that worries us, and especially if that demand for parts increases, then what will really happen to our jaguar populations? Throughout Latin America, illegal wildlife trafficking for parts for jaguars is happening, and we want to make sure that something like this won't affect our jaguar populations here. So we have to do something about it to make sure, just raise awareness about it. And when it comes to the consumers, it's just, if you know that you see a jaguar tooth on sale, you know that's illegal. Don't promote it. Don't buy it, even though you think it's prettier. Deferred, don't buy these things. For example, also one of the big things that affects jaguars is just the prey that we're overhunting throughout Belize. So then that's when the conflict happens and with the cattle, and then you get killed. So if you are a Belizean and you like game meat, just if you want, it's no problem. You can consume game meat, but just when the seasons are open. Respect the closed seasons. Just give them that time to reproduce, just to make sure that jaguars
still have
prey.
And I think this is actually where, with jaguars, we get into the segment that you had before, which I just looked at. It's kind of like the only way how you keep jaguars is by having these tracts of forests that are relatively intact with prey that's around, because jaguars need these enormous, vast areas that are there, and Belize still has them. And that's the only reason why Belize still has jaguars. In other areas, you might have a sort of, oh, we got a nice piece of forest, and you can have like one jaguar that lives very happy in that. But that jaguar is just going to die of old age, and then there's no more jaguars in that piece of forest, and there's no jaguar that can come from the outside into it, and then it's just there.
It comes.
Now, they used to have a program of tracking the jaguars, right, through Panthera.
There's different things where there's been parts where they've been putting collars on them, and we're still hoping that through different parts that we can do that.
Do you still track the jaguars that originally wore the collars?
No, the collars drop off automatically. It's the one thing that nowadays you can actually just, it used to be in the olden days that you would stand on the top of a mountain and you would do with your antenna and everything like that. Nowadays, you put a collar around their neck, and I just drink my coffee in the morning, and I look on a map, and I see, oh, he's over there, he's over there.
It's in Argentina.
That would be very. But it's actually sort of like with these GPS collars, and they drop off automatically. That it is, and they're very powerful tools. You can actually just. It would be something that even with a problem cat, you would be able to see sort of like Mr. Farmer One, I would lock up your cattle. There's a jaguar walking around you nearby there, and those sort of things are, and that is, that's something which would be a very powerful tool to be there. One of the things is also with farmers that very frequently they're not always completely aware
Yeah.
That it's kind of like that there's a Jaguar actually walking around their farm
Yeah.
and that there's no problems. That's also something which, with our data, that we can actually
Look
show.
at
I know.
That's from your video recordings.
Yeah,
where
this
you-
is this is one of the cats that we actually had on the, and one of the, I mean, actually,
That's a perfect selfie there.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
That's
No, no.
Jaguar, but
no,
yeah.
but the one thing that I can actually say, that cat,
my.
you look
Isn't
at it,
he so cute?
that cat was shot.
What?
It's on a farm. He was
Yeah.
on a farm. He was causing trouble. So if you think that's
So he or she is dead?
And it was actually with this one, they were killing sheep, and if you can see, it was two of them always
Yeah.
together. Yeah.
and it's on a, but that's the reality of
Yeah.
it. That's the reality of it. And you can see here a cat that's walking past the barbed wire.
Yeah.
And if you got the good strands of barbed wire, you got the good fences, that cat will remain on the right side of
yeah.
the fence.
Yeah.
If your fences are really slack, your borderline is not big enough that they actually sort of like they don't like to walk, then they start going to the other side and investigate. So it's
What is that?
this is well you explained. Can you remember this is the
This situation is down south, and what was happening is farmers, they kill cattle, and the remains, like the head, the guts, you cannot sell those. So they would dump it in a part of the forest outside of the village, and
it
they
became easy.
they indirectly started feeding the jaguars. So what happened? These jaguars were so dependent that they would wait for the farmers to actually go and dump it. And then it would become a problem that there were reports that the jaguars would just stay around there, just waiting for the
like
food.
they're practically domesticated.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Pets.
And from there, then they were going closer to the village
Yeah.
to start feeding on the live cattle that were in the pastures, just because they got so accustomed to this.
Yeah.
So what we did in this area, if you can see the
Fence.
fence, we were working with the community to build a fence so that they would dump everything inside, and the jaguar wouldn't have any food source. So they wouldn't really get used to. If you can see in this one, they're trying to get
That is
in.
desperation now. I
Yes.
smell it, I need it, and
Yes.
I can't get in.
But it's
but one of the parts that's here, the sort of domestication of jaguars, that is the most dangerous
Yeah.
thing that is there. You don't want them to get used to people. The one time that you get them wandering around the village in daytime and everything like that, happens every once in a while. That's when we have to be very careful, and that's the thing when we're immediately getting the discussion now for what do we do about that. That's where acting is very quick, and that is where I think it's very important and it's very good, where I can actually just say that Chanelli has been excellent at bringing all the different organizations together in terms of doing the management on a national level.
Yeah.
Not that everybody does their little kind of area,
Yeah.
this is just minor, but everybody is kind of like, there's this happening, what do we do about that? And there's a quick decisions being made, and that's something where, and that's something that's excellent.
what we have. We started in 2015. Few months, last months of 2015, we started the National Jaguar Working Group, where we brought together all the different organizations that were working towards jaguar conservation, and we have had very good discussions about how we want to see this move into the future.
Yeah.
And it's just to prevent things like these. For example, this is a dead cat there. So it's because of conflict, and we see that's a huge issue in Belize, and we have to work towards how can we improve things, just so that our populations can still be here in the future. We don't want it to be that we just get to see them like this.
Pictures.
Yes. So it's something it's a work in progress, and we really are
But
trying.
I've been here in Belize now for 15 years studying jaguars. Feel privileged, really. I do. I'm, and the one thing that I see is that there is definitely this, in terms of management and how it's being approached. There's this build up, and there's definitely that it's being things are being done much more professionally and everything like that. It's never perfect. It's never perfect, but there's definitely now the will. And with people like Chanelli coming in and other people that are there, I'm very hopeful for the future in that sense that it's their resources are limited, but they're limited everywhere. And so, but with the limited resources, there's there's a maximum amount that's coming out of that, and that's very hopeful. That's very good.
So it's what I'm hearing from you is that the jaguars that are killed because they come in conflict with human or their property, it is an annual occurrence. But what numbers are we looking at? How many reported jaguar killings do you get per year?
It fluctuates a bit, but sometimes 4, 5 per year reported cases.
Reported,
Yes.
yeah. You wouldn't know if somebody has shot a jaguar in the jungle and it just stayed there.
Yeah, sometimes we do hear about it later on when they have already killed the jaguar, dumped it into the forest, decomposed. We don't really even get to see. So what we do is even after a jaguar is killed, the carcass is the property of the government of Belize, and you should report it because we don't want anyone staying with the tooth, the skin, anything like that. So we confiscate those bodies and we make sure that we dispose of it properly. But what we also do is the forest department works along with ERI and Panthera, and if you see this picture, we have always discussed about rosettes. It's like the fingerprints for the jaguars. So if we get an image of a jaguar that's causing conflict or that was killed, we send that picture over to Bart and the team at ERI, and we sometimes track it to see where has this jaguar been in the past, where has it been moving. So that way we actually understand more about these animals.
And there is in many ways.
So you're the human tracking device for
Yeah.
based on their spots.
No, exactly.
So where has that jaguar been?
No.
Do you recognize her?
Well,
Kim.
the one thing is that actually the one that you saw by the
selfie?
the pen,
Uh-huh.
the pen was dragging down. It's actually that was a cat that was born in Coxcomb.
In Coxcomb?
Yeah, we had one photograph just a long time ago as a young adolescent, and he moves down to the south
what are
into
the identifying? And I know this is a very complex thing, but just
Oh,
if you could give us the simplest identifier, how you know that's the Coxcomb baby.
At the moment we're doing it, there's actually computer programs that
Oh,
can
okay.
go through it like that, but every once in a while it's this one that you go, and I cannot actually, this one has a very specific one, but there's very much in our office that you get those sort of things. Oh, you mean the one with the pizza at the back and the sort of things like that, and the smiley face and this, and sort of like
Or three stripes on its tail.
you start naming them, and there's, for example, there was one that was called, oh, you mean Superman, because he had almost like a Superman logo on his side, and all those sort of things are kind of like things that were.
Yeah.
So they get nicknames based on their spot patterns and their things that are there, and that's and some of them are just sort of like, yeah, that's that one.
Yeah.
And we know that one is actually being sort of like, and there's no mistake about it. There's really no mistake about it. And with that we know this is one in Coxcomb that moves to Toledo. There's been animals that are first caught in the Chickapool and end up all the way in the north in Rio Bravo. So you start really, what we're getting is, with all the cameras, with all the different partners that are putting cameras out, we're getting a national database of cats that are there, and we hope to just eventually get to a level that we can really just almost sort of like, okay, this is.
Had you come in contact with the dead jaguar that was found?
We immediately ran it through it, and it wasn't one that we.
Okay.
That animal was too young.
Okay.
How young?
I think it was 6 months, right? Something like that.
From the necropsy report that we got, it was approximately 6 months. Very young animal. Very unfortunate that it was killed, and definitely we kind of have ruled out possibly that it was a conflict animal just because of we saw the stomach contents, and it was just eating iguanas.
Yeah.
So then it was really just for the head.
Possibly.
Yeah. You know, Dr. Bart, you said something I think that is so important. I'm sure people who listen to this who have issues with jaguars that come after their animals, they see things from a very different perspective than we do. We live in the city, we look at the photos, we say, oh, they're so pretty, but we don't have a direct threat.
Yeah.
And so it really is about being able to understand as hunters, as persons who perhaps manage farms, that we rely on them to be able to maintain these species, and perhaps do what is the most responsible, which is contact the forest department before taking action for themselves, right? Yeah. Now, if a farmer says, well, I call the forest department and they take so long to get here, I've already lost 3 more sheep by the time they get here, and that's money. That's their income. What do you say to them?
Well, it's something that it's a bit difficult, and like I said, it's a work in progress because for many years the Jaguar officer was one person for the country.
Yeah.
For very recently, I think it was last 6 months approximately, where now we're trying to make it national. Have people throughout the country that can respond. In the past, it was just me in one vehicle and running all around the country, with people, sometimes 5-6 persons calling per week, and sometimes not getting to all of them. So it is a process that, yes, it does take a bit of time, but we really do try to make sure that we get to them as soon as possible. And even if we can't be there, we call them through the phone. Well, this is what you can do for meanwhile. Like, just leave your lights on at night and give the recommendations. Meanwhile, we get to each one of them.
That was going to be my next question, actually. Just what can people do? If I'm a farmer and I suspect there's a jaguar around, perhaps I'm starting to see some kind of movement that makes me uncomfortable, what can I do to reinforce my farm to not have to face the problem in the first place?
I think one of the things that's the most important thing that has to happen, a jaguar needs to recognize that he comes on a farm. And that is very frequently here in Belize a problem, because a jaguar just ventures into something that is kind of like, well, there's a sort of fence. I can just go underneath it. There's many strands of just prickly things that are anyway there.
This is easy.
But I don't actually recognize that I come into something that's a human structure. I don't recognize that I'm actually leaving the bush and coming into something. So it's like buffer zones that are very, like now it's getting suddenly there's no vegetation. I need to cross something where I just lose cover. These are animals that are very well camouflaged if they are in the bush, not in the open, so they're not comfortable in the open. Suddenly I get to a fence that's not that easy to get into. Suddenly I get to lights and sounds that I don't hear that are there. Very frequently people have their cattle in something where a jaguar simply cannot recognize that he's leaving the bush. And that's where all these things comes in, with lights, with sounds, with fences that are in the right kind of way. They need to know I'm walking into an urban area. Now sometimes those things are barriers where a cat, because they're trained to actually accept human, those are the cats that you actually have to more do sort of like, we have to be careful. Maybe these ones have to be taken out of the system. At the moment the zoo is something where it is. And when I'm saying taken out of the system, I'm always very careful how we do that. But we might have to make those decisions, and that's what we definitely talk about. And it's the continuous dialogue with the farmers that we need to keep, and we need to make sure that we take them seriously.
Absolutely.
Not this sort of like, you're evil because you're killing jaguars. Never do that. We have to take them seriously.
And you said a buffer zone as well. Removing vegetation from around your fences may help. So that the jaguar doesn't feel like it's stepping out into the open.
So we have seen that sometimes it's in situations where it's the jaguar comes and eats a dog in your backyard, in very, very rural areas. But when we go to the house and we see the area, you have grasses this high right behind your house. So it's like what Bart explained. For the jaguar, it's like it's just a continuation of the forest. It's just there. They don't like clean areas. So it's just keeping your yard clean. If you have cattle, keep your buffers. Don't let your pastures overgrow, because if they have bits of trees and bushes here and there, then they're just going to go into the pastures. You have to make them recognize that this is different from the forest. So they like to hide. Just don't give them the space where they can easily.
And is there a hotline? If I know that a hunter is bragging about having a jaguar ahead right now, which somebody might, not for the purpose of anything else other than just to extract teeth or to have it as a trophy or use the skin, who do I call?
So we have a cell number, 664-4550, which goes directly to me. All conflict calls, they can be directed to that number, but also we have been getting calls through people contacting NGOs, and then NGOs contact us, or you can call the Forest Department at 822-1524. And we have been receiving many calls about possible tips and what is happening around. So any of those numbers and the information does get to us.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming in and reminding us once again about the importance of these species and what people can do within their own farms and within their own homes and rural communities to protect themselves, first of all, and ensure that there's less conflict, right? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We're going to go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, we'll be talking to the Belize Defense Force about their upcoming BDF Day, so stay tuned.